As the dust settled after the ravages of World War II, an emaciated Europe stood surrounded by the rubble of war, both physical and social. With populations depleted, cities devastated, industries crippled, and societies destabilized, Europe's very survival hung in a precarious balance. It was in this bleak hour that the United States extended a lifeline through an ambitious initiative to resurrect the continent, the Marshall Plan. This colossal reconstruction effort channeled vital aid into rebuilding societies, markets, and hope. It laid the foundations for European integration and over 70 years of peace. The Marshall Plan's leadership cemented the U.S.'s role in securing global stability for generations to come. By the close of the war, aerial bombardment, artillery barrages, and bloody urban warfare had left many of Europe's cities looking like apocalyptic landscapes. Entire areas were razed to the ground. Factories, railroads, bridges, and power plants lay in utter ruin. Millions of homes were destroyed, leaving citizens homeless. Agricultural production was devastated, threatening severe food shortages. Critical infrastructure had been reduced to rubble across the continent. Worse still, the very social and governmental institutions meant to respond to such catastrophe were themselves in tatters. Populations had been decimated, both from casualties and displacement. Key government staff and essential services like healthcare had collapsed. Courts, policing, transportation, communications, all core pillars of society, were fractured or functional only at a bare minimum. Faith in public institutions was eroded after populations endured authoritarian regimes, and Europe was on the brink of complete collapse. It was amidst the ashes of this devastation that U.S. Secretary of State George Marshall surveyed the situation in 1947. With Europe struggling to even restore basic living conditions, Marshall realized only an initiative of epic proportions could provide the massive infusion of aid needed to resurrect Europe from the ruins. This realization birthed the ambitious Marshall Plan. At Harvard in June of that year, Marshall unveiled the framework of the initiative bearing his name. Beyond just providing financial assistance and physical resources, the Marshall Plan was designed to comprehensively restore the institutional capacity of European nations. The aid was directed into multiple focus areas: food production and distribution, industrial recovery and employment, trade barrier reduction, monetary stability, and debt relief. By providing this targeted support, the Marshall Plan aimed to help Europe restart the engines of commerce and production. The initiative ran from 1948 to 1952 and dispersed over $15 billion to European nations, with the largest total grants going to the UK, France, and Germany. The aid comprised about 5% of the U.S. GDP annually at the time, exemplifying the scale of commitment. Each receiving country submitted detailed proposals on their needs and recovery plans, while a management apparatus helped administer the funds and shape initiatives tailored to local contexts. This architecture allowed the Marshall Plan to succeed by ensuring aid directly addressed reconstruction priorities in agricultural, fiscal, administrative, social, and commercial spheres. It enabled both rapid large-scale recovery and instituted mechanisms for economic self-sufficiency. The plan's holistic structure set a model for strategic capacity building, and the impacts of the Marshall Plan far exceeded returning war-torn nations to functioning states. By actively fostering cooperation, promoting trade, and funding integration, the plan laid the seeds of the modern European Union. Leaders credited as foundational in encouraging European harmony and collectiveness. It enabled former enemy nations to collaborate, progressively reducing resentment while boosting cross-border manufacturing supply chains and market connectivity. Critically, all this rapid collective rebuilding created a sense of a shared future and possible prosperity, reducing incentives for conflict. By 1952, European coal and agricultural production had even surpassed pre-war levels. Currency stability and low inflation encouraged investment. Unemployment had reduced from over 10% to under 5%, and trade flows between nations had increased by over 90%. The structures and relationships built through the plan also firmly cemented the U.S.'s leadership role in Europe's future. It countered Soviet influence and turned the page firmly towards the U.S. alliance and guidance. This influence endures today, with the EU and NATO, both Marshall Plan legacies, at the core of global security. While the Marshall Plan bore his name, Marshall himself avoided the limelight, preferring to empower European leaders to drive recovery themselves. He insisted aid be contingent on Europeans determining needs, plans, and distribution themselves. Marshall's experience leading troops through decimated European battlegrounds shaped his understanding of the scope of devastation and the necessity of rapid but disciplined rebuilding. Hands-off as an administrator, he brought the strategic eye of a military leader in recognizing only a sweeping initiative could reverse Europe's disintegration. Marshall well understood the power of ideas and how thoughtfully structured initiatives could remake societies. His broader worldview helped ensure the plan considered political stability and integration just as strongly as economic repair. Wary of aid dependence, Marshall designed the plan to catalyze self-sufficiency, not dependency. Its administration structure empowered Europeans to determine their own destinies again. As Secretary Marshall addressed Harvard graduates that day in 1947, a devastated Europe could scarcely imagine recovering from the catastrophe of such an unprecedented scale. Yet his vision set not just material reconstruction in motion, but reknit the social fabric binding societies together. The Marshall Plan built the foundations for the 7 continuous decades of European peace and prosperity we have seen, by uplifting nations from desolation through the power of ideas and carefully structured aid.